The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Welcome to The People's View.
Hello, and today our guest is Senator Kevin Avard. Senator, how is it being a senator now after being a couple of years as a rep?
It's quite interesting. It is a different. It's a different speed. It's a different pace.
It is. Well, 24 people handling as much as we handle with 400. I don't know which is more difficult.
It really, well, you know, right now we've had approximately 200 bills in the Senate, and you're dealing with maybe 900 in the House.
Yeah.
And just dealing with those 200, you know, they take very good care. I mean, they caucus quite a bit, making sure that everybody's on the same page. And in caucus, you know, that's where we duke it out. You know, we rub heads, but then when we come out, we know what we're going to be doing, and that's kind of refreshing. That's really cool.
Yeah.
So you know what's going to happen before time. So you know there are very little surprises. You've really ironed out a lot of the essential things that need to be discussed before you even get there into session. And so I really like that part of it.
That process sounds very good. It'd be kind of hard to implement with 400 people, though.
Well,
because the committees don't caucus enough. They caucus as a group, Republicans and Democrats.
Right.
And this year it's two Republicans.
Well, when we do caucus, we caucus as Republicans and the Democrats. And I would think that if the House were successful at doing similar tactics like the Senate does,
I think so too.
You would have a lot less specious time up on the floor. You'd have it all ironed out. You duked it out in caucus. Get it over with and duke it out, and so that you know it doesn't appear that there's a whole bunch of rancor and discord. And I don't know if leadership. I'm not following the House that much, so I'm really not sure.
Well, as you know, both Jack Flanagan and
Jasper,
excuse me. The HRA group are ones that are discussing these things. Jack has his caucus, the Republican, total Republican, and the HRA is a conservative.
Is that
group.
O'Brien?
Yeah. Well, it's O'Brien is involved with that, but it's not. He's not leading it. There's three people in the HRA: Bill Ohm, Carol McGuire, and Leon Rideout, who are the leaders there. But it isn't. They don't have the same format that they used to have, where you really did hash it out at the HRA meetings. Right now, with so many bills, I don't know how many we had to handle this year, this last week, but it was over 300, I think.
How long did you stay last night?
6:30.
Yeah,
it was 9:30 the night before.
We were in the Senate till 6:15 about.
Yeah.
So it was a late night, and you know it's funny. I rushed out of there. I had to go food shopping. I do the food shopping, and we alternate on who's cooking supper. And then I had to go. Drinkable Arts was having an event here in town, and I promised them that I would stop in, and I was a little late for that. And there was the Air Patrol. They were having awards, and so you're constantly going. But if ever I felt like I was a servant, I really feel it now, and I get a joy out of that. A real joy out of that. I feel like I'm doing the people's work.
Well, I think we all are up there to a certain extent. It was a little bit hectic, though, when you're trying to whip through some of these things. And some people, I think, like to hear themselves talk. But for the most part, we got some very important bills straightened out, like the bill for the charter schools.
Yep. I saw the kids. I walked through the line. You know, that's going to be coming up, I believe, into my committee, education. I think either that or finance. I'm not really sure.
Well, you know, one thing I didn't find out that until somebody brought it up at the discussion was that there is this educational trust fund that they have. And it so happens that I think that's why they chose the number. I forget what exactly that number is, but it's like $40 million that they're supposed to be getting. Not the first year. The first year's only increased like $36. It's sort of a token increase. I'm not sure why they scheduled it that way. But the second year is the $40 million. But that's the excess funds that are in there just because of the decrease in the number of students we have going to schools in the state. Okay, because they base it on numbers that are 2 years old.
Right.
And we're in a decreasing mode right now with the number of children being less. So it's really covered by this trust fund. So people who are worried about taking money away from the schools, well, you got to remember, these kids are going to these charter schools. They're not paying anything into it, and they're only getting, right now, for $5,000 from the state.
And the state average is about 10,000, I believe.
Well,
10, 13, something.
the overall, the schools are putting out on the average of 12 or 13,000 per pupil, and you know, they're getting less pupils, so they should, you know, and the only way you really pay for these charter schools, since there's kids coming from a number of different communities,
right?
And it's not it's just to take some of that money that they would be getting for those kids going to those schools and putting it into the pot, which pays these kids.
It's going to be some interesting debating on that. I can already tell you.
It's complicated, yeah.
It is. Now, I think you folks voted for the fetal homicide bill as well?
Yes.
And that passed?
You know, I'm
pretty sure it did. I've been following that. I think I co-sponsored that in the House. And also the on social issues. I mean, there was that buffer zone.
Yeah.
I think that was defeated too. So hopefully when it comes up into the Senate, I actually co-sponsored that one too. That was, it's just a First Amendment thing, you know?
Yeah.
Why are you excluding one group over another group? I remember when we were going through the gauntlets a few years back, and everybody had a right. They had a right to speak their mind, and some of that was very intimidating. I don't think that's happening with these buffer zones at Planned Parenthood or anything to that effect. If anything, people are praying.
Yeah, no, I don't know where they get some of this stuff. I don't know whether there's some places where it's happening, but I participated a few years ago, and it is just...
You weren't throwing rocks or anything, were you?
No, not doing anything like that. The only thing that we were trying to do is to get people to listen or take a piece of literature, but we weren't mauling them or anything, you know, getting in their way.
Right.
And they sort of, I don't know.
No, well, you know, when we were looking up at the balcony and we were seeing the fists and the fingers and the threats and the, hey, I'm watching you, you have a right to do that.
Yeah.
But that's intimidating. And if ever there were going to be a buffer zone, but I wouldn't support one. I think as long as you don't get violent on people and get in their way and block them, everything's cool.
Or, you know, don't use sound equipment and blare at them or something like that.
Right.
Which is what they did, that group that was protesting military funerals, which I couldn't.
Yeah, the military doesn't tolerate that either. They're pretty offended by that, and they should be. And, you know.
Well, anybody's funeral, it should be, you know, private and, you know, correct, polite.
So out of all the bills that you had the other day, I mean, what sticks out for you?
Well, the right to work law passed by only 3 votes or 6. Well, it depends what you look at, because apparently the interesting part is some people, when you roll call, they don't want to be identified with a certain vote. So some of those are tighter.
Yeah.
But what happened is after the right to work, and this was one of them, because we had 2 right to work laws, and the second one was defeated at the end of the day, when there was almost not enough people there.
Yeah, when people start petering out, right? It's like.
But what I wanted to get back to is after the 3 vote that was done, they reconsidered it, and the reconsideration went down by like 25 votes. So there were at least 20 people that didn't want to be roll called, but was a division where the vote is not identifiable. More people voted for that.
Roll calls. That's one of the things I wanted to do a lot more in the Senate. And yesterday, I think I kind of dropped the ball. I really wanted to roll call one vote, but and it had to do with the Medicare expansion.
Yeah.
I voted to ITL it in committee, and the committee report didn't. They just tabled it instead of. And so I wanted to roll call it, and I was committed to do that. And then at the last minute, I just didn't. But so mea culpa.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is, I don't like the Medicaid expansion. I was never for it. I spoke about it before, ever. And
Well, one thing that surprised me, they got their waiver on that Medicaid.
they got their
expansion.
waiver, yeah. But again, I still think the numbers that before you extend it again,
Yeah.
let's get the real figures.
Yeah. Right. I
Yeah.
agree with you there.
Yeah, and we had a good discussion about the certificate of need, and I have mixed feelings about that. I met with some very high-end officials from some of the best hospitals in the state, and I was very frank with them. I just directly said, "Hey, what do you think about the CON, certificate of need, which basically certifies whether you can have medical facilities or not." And there's a commission that says, well, yes, we need it, we don't need it. And the executive said, I hate it, but we need it. And I'm just okay. I'm looking there, real, very blank face. Well, what do you mean? Well, I hate it because it has obviously some controls and we don't necessarily like to have to go through this bureaucracy. But if we don't have the certificate of need for the medical facilities, there'll be they'll open up the floodgates, and Massachusetts will come in here, and they'll be everywhere. And I'm thinking to myself, no, that's a bad thing, because I met
competition.
It's competition. It's jobs, and I'm scratching my head, and I'm being very polite, and I'm thanking him because this is obviously his industry, and I think there's a level of protection of our providers, and I can understand that. However, when I go and visit some of these facilities, I won't mention some of their names, medical facilities, and they say, well, we don't have enough providers. Well, if you don't have enough providers, and we have the CON that doesn't allow more providers to open up the floodgates for more competition to come in, then we have a solution.
And it doesn't do anything on the control of the costs.
Well, it does in one effect. We have the highest costs in the country. And consequently, that bleeds also to your workers' comp. Obviously with competition, the prices should go down. That's capitalism. But if you hold off on that competition so that these other places can get secure, I understand it. We got to protect our own to some degree. However, jobs. We need jobs, and there's a direct link in my mind. And this executive was very, very frank with me, very polite, and I really appreciated his perspective. Yeah, but then we got into this whole, well, it's complicated. It's complicated. When it got on the floor, I'm more and more convinced that we need it. And it came in as an amendment to push forward the sunset from 2016 to 2015 for the CON because apparently it was already extended a couple of times.
Yeah.
So we thought, well, let's what the impetus for this bill, this amendment that came in to rush it forward, was Franklin Hospital wanted another waiver.
Really?
Now they sit on the board for CON, but or the hospitals do, but yet they want a waiver for the own rules that other people can't do.
Right.
It's just not free market. It's cronyism in my mind, and I understand that there needs to be, certain protections. However, we need the jobs, and some of these providers need, some of these facilities need providers. And with our workers' comp being so high, with our medical costs being so high, with the limitations certainly that of providers in the state, why not open up that door, take out the barriers so that we can have all those jobs coming up, and maybe you can pay for your rail, if the industry so needs it. And it's just common sense. So that was kind of like my first debate. It was pretty interesting.
It is, and there are other things too, like on mental health care. They're trying to set up an area so that all the, north, south, east, west, and central have one at least 10-bed facility in those areas for emergency medical health care. And I know that is needed. I have relatives who had to have a problem and had to go to Vermont to find a bed for their son going through an episode. And it was, the problem is that there's so many different drugs. I shouldn't say the problem, it's a problem. And a lot of times, especially with kids growing up, as their body changes, their drug need change. And sometimes it affects their reaction to things, events. And so
you increase or you lower the dose.
That's right. And so they had to keep him in for a week or so until they got his meds, under control. And anyway, there are places now. There is a hospital in Claremont that is looking for, and I think that's coming through the Senate, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that that was part of the discussion. But will he meet the certificate of need?
Right.
I think Senator Carson also had a senior age facility, senior medical facility in her area that was declined. So that, and I think she's Londonderry or New London. I'm not really sure which one of what her district is.
No, it's Londonderry. It's a district.
Okay, so they were applied for a medical facility, and the certificate of need didn't even listen to them. No. All right, so now they don't have that type of
Yeah.
So there's definitely a downside that needs to be considered.
But New London is one of the hospitals too that is looking for a medical facility, a mental health facility.
Right.
It's the center one. Claremont is the western one.
Right.
And they came in. They said, "Look, we have the room, but we need some capital money to restructure the room, so we have 10 independent rooms,
Right.
instead of just one ward situation."
So those are, and it's funny when you get into committee, you know as well as I do, some things aren't just as black as white,
Right.
black and white, and you really have to mull things over. It troubles me when people grandstand. It just.
Well, what troubles me, it's like grandstanding, but is when they withhold some key information,
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, another issue that came up, Carl, if you don't mind, we were talking about the, is it the EBT card?
Yeah.
That was a discussion, and of course,
This is the welfare card that people
the
can
welfare
use.
card, and we just don't want people using for alcohol, for cigarettes and porn and stuff like that. So, it was a debate, and of course, we had some bleeding hearts coming in. Why can't they have their alcohol? Well, it's supposed to help you when you're really destitute. But right now, you can take your card and you can go to the ATM, and then you can go through the line. We had a discussion on how you're gonna monitor it. Are you going to monitor the items, or are you going to monitor the car? It was interesting. But if you go through the line, you can't buy the alcohol, so then you go to the ATM, cash it out, you can pay an extra $3 or whatever, and then go back in and buy your alcohol. And that's probably not resolvable. We're not really sure. I just asked one of the officials in Health and Human Services, I said, by the way, is there any indication how much fraud's going on there? And one person way in the back from the fraud division of Health and Human Services said, well, we've uncovered about $1 million in fraud. And I said, oh, do you need help in agents? And they said, yeah, we're really low on people in that fraud department. And we're backlogged about 13 months. So ladies and gentlemen, let's push for more agents to help with the fraud in Health and Human Services. Let's consider that so that they can recoup that money and put it towards the needy, because these people are ripping off the truly needy. And it's okay we do all feel for those that are down and out. I've been homeless. I know what it's like way in my early years. And when people lend a hand, it's great. But when people are ripping off from those people, I have very little pity for them.
Well, look what happened too. That cashier who was fired because she wouldn't honor the EBT card for some beer people wanted to purchase.
Right.
That's not right. I mean, and people should back something like that. So Yeah, she was doing her job.
A true story. When I was a state rep,
Yeah.
I was up in Boscawen, and there was a Cumberland Farms there, and there was a gentleman that was in front of me. He had a carton of cigarettes, maybe 2 cartons of cigarettes, and 2 6-packs or an 18-pack, a really big pack, whatever it was. And he's swiping his EBT card, and it didn't go through. And he's swiping it again, and he's swiping it again. Of course, I'm standing there with my state rep badge behind him. I didn't say a word. I'm just looking at the situation. I'm thinking, you're kidding me. And the teller kept pressing a button. Nope, didn't go through. Nope, didn't go through. And he did it about 6 or 7 times. He says, I don't know what's going on. It always works. And I'm thinking, clue? Right? It was comical, but, you know, here, if they're using it for cigarettes, obviously their health is going to be, there's going to be problems with the health. And of course, the alcohol, right. There's a potential of abuse there. And it's not going towards the diapers that really need it, or the milk, or the formula, or the laundromat. So it's, in my mind, you know, everybody up there seems to want that federal money for their schools. They want their federal money for the tolls. They want the federal, for the highways.
Everything.
For everything. And we all know that with that federal money comes certain caveats, certain strings. And yes, we want that federal money. Okay, we'll put in this program for that federal money. But if you give somebody an EBT card, no strings attached, because they're poor, well, that's not right. You know, we want to help you. We don't want you just to stay there. We want to help you, lift you out of that. And you know, this is to get you by that time that it's difficult, you know.
But on a federal level, they also do the same thing. They ignore some of the fraud. You saw that 60-minute thing a couple of years ago about South Florida, where they had a lot of people sending in bills, and they just paid them. Because somebody said that they had to pay their bills within 30 days. So they said that, well, that's not time enough to check for fraud or anything, so they never bother anyone.
Right, and so the taxpayers are getting milked, and the debt goes up, and nobody seems to have the will to do it. So I think if we can do anything for the state, we should at least, in Health and Human Services, offer some more personnel to help recover, because it really is, they're earning their pay. It's not costing us. They're finding savings. They're backlogged 13 months. And I think that's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, if you're backlogged 13 months, you know that they're going to uncover a lot more.
Well, another area, too, that federal money essentially amounts to be bribes is education. All the things that are coming down from the Department of Education. And, you know, you don't have to implement it, but if you don't implement it, you don't get the regular money.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of there's a lot of misinformation out there. And by the way, thinking of that, SB 101 did pass, which it was a very simple bill. That was my bill that passed, and it had to do with the state not mandating Common Core. And everybody said, well, it's not mandated already. Then why do you have a problem? It's just saying, look, this is the law. You cannot mandate Common Core. Now, Smarter Balance is the big stick behind Common Core, which also should not be mandated as well. When we say we're for local control, we really mean it. But I'm not sure the Department of Education understands that. You know, we really mean local control.
I think they understand it. They just want to ignore it.
Well, that's why I introduced SB 81 and 82. And we were going to actually take some of the authority away from the commissioner and the Department of Ed, and not allow them to take these grants, not allow them to have liaisons between the federal government and the Department of Education, and implement these programs that nobody voted on.
Right.
And once these programs are in, the federal money runs out, the programs have to stay, and the taxpayers are stuck with the money. The taxpayers are stuck with having to continue these programs that they don't necessarily agree with. And there's a lot of information about the Common Core and Smarter Balance. Talked to some teachers. I've actually hijacked them a couple of times where I see them sitting on a bench when I'm watching basketball or lacrosse. And you always know a teacher. They're in the crowd and they're doing this. You know, oh, you're a
Correcting
teacher.
paper.
And so they don't know me from a hole in a wall. And so I just go over and I sit next to them and I say, oh, you're a teacher. I am. Oh, what grade do you teach? Oh, 5th or 6th. Wonderful. What do you think about Common Core? And some of them really love it. Really, you like it? Great. Well, but then the caveat to that is, but I don't know how we're going to pay for this smarter balance. And there's a lot of other things that are involved with it, like the psychological testing that the parents never agree to, but it's going on. That goes into a database. You know, I never was a conspiracy guy, but you know, what are you doing all this information? You know, it's not your business what, you know, if we eat Cheerios in the morning, you know, it's not your business if we pray. It's not your business if we have a gun in the house.
Right.
That's none of your business.
Yeah.
Why are you questioning them? So all these things come out, and we just, those two bills, by the way, died. You know, they came heavily against those. So I would like to make this proposal that the Department of Education and maybe the Attorney General's office and all these other executive departments become elected positions so that you, the people, have more say and there's more accountability. Because it seems to me, Carl, that what happens is they get into these positions, they insulate themselves, and they wait you out for 2 years. Oh, I'll just have to wait you out. And there's going to be a new
I was
election.
here before you were elected, and I'll be here after you're elected.
Exactly. So we'll just wait you out because I'm appointed.
That's right.
And I think there might be some positives to that, but I think there's more of a positive if people are more accountable to the people. I mean, everybody's talking about right to know right now. And so how do you kill right to know? Well, you put a fee with it. We'll fix you. You want to know something, it's going to cost you. You're already paying for it. You don't need to. All right, I'm getting off my
No,
soapbox.
that's a bill that we didn't pass. I mean, that we did pass. It was making sure it's going to be free.
Yeah, we just had a heavy debate about it in the Senate yesterday, and we're all for the governor having the same responsibilities. I think she is accountable under the right to know law. With the debate,
She's denying it.
Well, we introduced some legislation, so Senator
It's
Pierce.
pretty clear.
Yeah, and then Senator Pierce, anteed it up. He says, well, if then all the emails of every state representative, everybody in the departments, everybody, whether you have a bill amendment, who you're talking to, all that should also be part of the right to know. And then and we said, okay, all right, we'll do that. Well, we really didn't mean it, and so they killed the bill.
Oh no!
It's all tabled, so it was a train wreck in the Senate. It's on.
Well, it's going
on
to be
camera.
interesting when this all comes out and we get some of these things in committee of conference, because for my committee there isn't really going to be any committee of conference, I don't think.
Speaking of that, and I think that's really important for the people to know, when the Senate passes a bill. It's like a negotiation sometimes because you know that bill's not done until it goes to the House, and the House looks at it. They say, yep, nope, we're going to add an amendment to it, and then it goes to the Committee of Conference. So that you do a bill, and you know that's not the end of that bill until everybody agrees. So you go for the gusto, and then it goes to the House, and the House either retains it or they say, okay, we're going to use this as a negotiation, and that's how it all works. And hopefully the cream floats to the top. So when the press does something on certain legislations, just, take off the rose-colored glasses or you look a little bit soberly at it because they're manipulating some of the facts. And I know there's some people that are worried about the photography thing at the voting booth, but that's going to go to the House. They can take it off. They can amend it. Here's what we've got. Now you guys work with it. And then we'll fix it all up in the end in the Committee of Conference so that it's more palatable to the people. That's how it's done. But people they don't realize the nuances that we have to deal with.
Yeah, well, and that works at the federal level too.
Right.
And I think that's where they have to concentrate to solve some of these problems that they have down there. But it is an interesting discussion that we're going to have to continue some other time. We're going to have the changeover at the end of the month, and we get to see what you did, and you get to see what we did.
Yep.
Then we can talk about what we can make bets on what's going to go to committee or conference, because there's going to be enough of it. I can
Oh,
tell.
I think there's going to be plenty. And one of the things about the governor's budget, and I hope that she doesn't raid the seniors fund there. There's $7 million that's coming out of the retirements and homes, or the nursing homes.
Nursing homes, yeah.
That's law.
Well, they can suspend law, and when it comes into HB2, that's where it hides.
Right.
So we got to look at that, and that's a big, thick thing. And I understand the governor's raising Cain because we're really deviating from her budget. But I think that was a con game from the beginning, where they came out with a 9% increase, knowing that didn't stand a chance, and she cuts it in half. That's still a 5% increase that she's proposing, I believe, another $1 billion. And I think we're saying that, hey, you're going to be around $250 million. That's all you're going to get. You know, not $1 billion. So I don't know. There's a fact, $750 million or more.
Right.
Once they figure out some of those, what they have to fill in.
People. Our job is not to grow this government.
Right.
It's to pay for it. And
To
let
develop the state and make sure we get back to the way we were. Well, we'll have to wait a little bit, Kevin.
All right.
We'll get back together maybe in a month or so, and we'll talk about what we have a clearer picture of how far off we are in the budget.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me. All right.
Thank you for listening in, and don't forget that the Republican City Committee meets on the second Thursday of every month at the Crown Plaza.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.